Hi everybody. We're talking about properties of real numbers today, and we'll break these videos into two parts. One of knowledge that you may have gained last year, and the next video, which you'll see sometime in the near future, will be things that we would assume that are going to be new to you this year. So I want to start off by talking about the commutative property and the associative property and the distributive property. These are all what we call properties of real numbers, and I'll do my best to explain those properties right now. What you're going to see in just a moment will be a bunch of whiteboards that have notes on them, so please feel free to pause and jot things down and rewind and fast forward and whatever you need to do. This is your video to gain some information. You may be seeing this at home, you may be seeing this in class, but this is your way of getting some of the information necessary so that we don't spend so much time taking notes in class and we can spend more time doing activities related to these skills. So without further ado, here we go. So the first property that I want to talk to you guys about is the commutative property, and I'll try to pop in here somewhere so you can see my face. But the commutative property basically relates to numbers moving around but not changing the sum or the product of the math problem. Sum meaning addition. I'll move back a little bit. Sum meaning addition, or product meaning the multiplication. And I like to say that the commutative property relates to that word commute. And if you have any parents that drive to and from work, you know that they usually have to drive far away sometimes, and then they have to drive back home. And just think of it as this. The commutative property is kind of like, if you got to drive 6 miles to work, you probably have to drive about 6 miles to go home. Move this over so you can see me. There you go. So if you're driving 6 miles to work, you drive 6 miles to go home, you're pretty much driving the same amount every time you go to work and home. So the commutative property kind of works in the same way. It doesn't matter how you add up the miles, they're both going to be the same for to work and from work. So commuting doesn't change the answer or value. And I'm going to show you some examples right now. So if you need to pause, go ahead and pause. But if not, we're going to flip this over and show you some examples. Here you go. So here are a few examples here. I'll hold those up for you. So when we're talking about addition, I made up an example of 9 plus 4 plus 1 equaling 4 plus 1 plus 9. Well, if I were to add up what's on each side of the the equal sign, you'll see that 9 plus 4 equals 13. And if I add 1 to that, I get 14. If I add up 4 plus 1 on the right side, I get 5. And if I add 9 to that, I also get 14. So the numbers haven't changed, or the values haven't changed on either side of the equal sign. Just like if you drive 14 miles to work, you're going to have to drive 14 miles home. Now take a look at multiplication. We have an example that says 2 times 5 times 2 equals 2 times 2 times 5. And if I were to simplify that equation, I would have 20 on both sides of the equal sign. Again, the numbers are coming out equal. So commutative property talks about having the same answers, but it doesn't matter in what order you add or multiply as long as you're doing all addition or all multiplication. Okay, we're going to move on to another cool property here. So take a pause if you need to, but if not, we're going to move on to the associative property. Okay. No, sir. Not yet. So the associative property, very similar. Okay, the associative property talks about things that are in groups. And when I say I associate with a group, then that means that I'm kind of in a group and I belong to a group. You know, you might be a part of a group at school or in your neighborhood, your church, your Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whatever they are, but you're in a group. You associate with those people. So when you associate, you may be in a group, but it doesn't change who you are. So when I have the associative property happening in a math problem, I'm not changing the answer. I'm just changing what the groups look like. Okay, and you can see that I wrote that grouping symbols like parentheses and brackets are going to be used in this. And let's look at some examples. Okay, so we have an addition example. So 7 plus 3 plus 5, and you see the parentheses are around the 3 plus 5, right? Where is that? Right here. Okay, and on the other side of the equal sign, you have 7 plus 3 in parentheses plus 5. And you can see that I simplified what's in the parentheses first. So we have 7 plus 3 first. And over here we have 3 plus 5 done first. So we have different ways of adding those numbers together. But guess what? We come up with the same sum in that example. I encourage you to copy this down, but I also encourage you to make your own examples. Sometimes making your own example will actually be a little more helpful than just mine, especially since I'm only giving you one per property. For multiplication, it works the same exact way. You can see that I have 2, whoop, wrong side, 2 times 3 times 4. Notice how there's no x there. Whenever you see a number outside of a set of parentheses, it's understood that you're going to be doing multiplication. And we'll talk a lot about that during the school year. Okay, so I'm going to solve everything in the parentheses. So 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 4 is 12. And I will just keep simplifying until I get my answer. 2 times 12 is 24. And so is 6 times 4. So the associative property tells us almost something similar to the commutative property, where you have the same answer, but it doesn't matter the grouping. Commutative is a little different because you're not changing the order. We're going to wrap this video up in just a moment with one more property that's a little different from what you've seen so far, but it's still kind of important, and I think you saw this last year, but we're going to review it. Make sure you guys are pretty clear about what you're doing. So the last one is called the distributive property. And I like to think about the distributive property as like the UPS or the FedEx guy of the math world, because we're going to deliver a factor or a number to some numbers that are inside a grouping symbol, like a set of parentheses. So just imagine that the number that's outside, where's it at? The number that's outside, little UPS truck guy, he's delivering a package to this guy and also this guy. That's a little bit. All right, I'll get this right eventually. All right. And we'll turn over, we'll look at some examples. Now these examples are a little bit scrunched together, so I'm going to apologize in advance, but they're pretty good still. So just look at the wavy line here, and ooh, there it is. And we have 2 examples, so we have 7 times 2 plus 3. So the 7's on the outside of the parentheses, and we have 2 plus 3 in the parentheses. So just like a FedEx driver would, he's going to deliver to the 2. Where's it at? Deliver to the 2, and deliver to the 3, and you'll see that how it looks down here. Well, that should be at times. Oops, we need to fix that. Pause for just a second. Fixing. Almost done, buddy. Almost done. Almost done. So we have 7 times 2 right there, and then 7 times 3, separated by that plus sign, because there's that plus sign right there. So we're respecting the plus sign that was in the expression in the first place. And I'm going to do some simplification. So 7 times 2 is, 7 times 3 is, add them together, and you get your sum. Okay. Remember how we talked about how multiplication is the basis for a lot of what we do? That's why we practice it. Put this over here. I'm working in opposites here, and that's hard. I'm looking at a screen while I'm doing this, guys. I think I'm doing pretty good so far. What do you think? So we have in our second example, 4 times 8 minus 2 plus 1. And the 8 minus 2 plus 1 is in parentheses. So again, we want to send that FedEx driver to the 8, to the 2, and to the 1. And we have a little bit of a scrunched up math work there, so I'll try to talk you through it. Wrong side, there you go. Okay, so we have 4 times 8 minus 4 times 2 plus 4 times 1. And we just did some simple multiplication, so 32 minus 8 plus 4. And I just worked my way left to right there. So 32 minus 8 is 24. 24 plus 4 is 28. That does say 28, doesn't it? Right there? Yeah, I think it does. Okay. So the distributive property is basically saying what's on the outside of a set of grouping symbols, we need to deliver it to what's on the inside of the grouping symbols, and then just do the math that we know how to do, whether it's multiplication and then addition, or multiplication and then subtraction. It might even be division sometimes, but most times for this course it's going to be addition and subtraction. Okay? Well, hopefully that was beneficial to you. That was my phone that fell on the ground. Don't tell anybody. But to wrap up, check here if you have any questions. MrKTeachesSTEM.weebly.com. And obviously check in class if you have a pressing question. These videos are going to be posted on Edmodo, and they may also be posted at the Weebly. So check either of those places whenever you are looking for some of that good instructional content. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a great day.